morning and welcome to Dublin City FM. You're listening to CouncilMatters with me, Mick FitzGerald, and this week we welcome back one of our graduates, Councillor Francis Duffy from out there in South Dublin County Council. Francis, welcome back again.
Hey Mick, thanks for having me.
Well, we should actually let listeners know, Francis, that since your last visit you have been elevated, not to the Pope, the papacy or sainthood or anything like that, but you've been elevated, recognised by your fellow peers. You're now the Deputy Lord Mayor of, the Deputy Mayor of South Dublin. Yeah.
That's right, yes.
How are you finding it?
Great. So far, it's been quiet, relatively quiet over the summer. I've attended one or two events. The National Day of Commemoration in Kilmainham was very nice. And not that many other things so far. I'm down. I've got my diary listed up for a couple of things coming up.
Are you telling me that Mayor Holland is not a delegator?
Oh, she is.
Ah, that's good.
Ah, she is. Yeah, I think I'm attending something in Clondalkin in a few weeks with the Irish. It's the women's. I'm going to get this wrong.
That's good.
The ICA or something. Like
Okay, the Irish Country Women's Association.
Right,
that's it. Yeah. Well, they're as I say, a long-standing and respected organisation. Yeah. You probably will find, and we have the same thing in media as well, is that one day you're out there and you're meeting a head of state or something like that, and the next minute, the next day you're out there and you're presenting a long-time service award to somebody who cleans elephant dung. You know? So there are, as I say, there's a large spectrum of it. Clearly, as I say, this is the first step up the ladder. Are you going to be? Do you see yourself in the long term in politics? Because you are an architect, you've got a professional career behind you.
I do, yes. Since I met you the first time, 6 months ago maybe.
Yes.
I found this whole year has been amazing. It's been very insightful. I'm excited by it. What you can do, because I think you can do. I have been doing various things, and they seem to be. Things seem to be happening, but I would have a long-term view of my political career, and I know I like to kind of put myself out that I've done things, and to vote for me on that reason and not because of But yes, I see this potential green seat maybe in the next 5 to 10 years.
I was going to say that because I would have suggested, not only for yourself but for the Green Party, the issues you tend to raise are more national and international than perhaps local. So would you see it as inevitable that if you want to really make that change or have that input, you really need to get to the next platform? To as I say, out to national politics.
Well, I think at the moment, working in the local politics, I'm learning a lot about how politics works and what you can do and how the way the system works. And I think what I'm doing locally can be put out nationally, or locally, as with the rainwater harvesting can go national. So I kind of work with a mix of both. And as you mentioned about being an architect, I would look at things as you've got an issue or a problem, how do you solve it? And how do you procure that into a reality? Yeah.
We'll come back to that one because, as I say, there's a Dublin housing it's a housing executive that have got some modular units up the road. Now, if you've got some time, I'd particularly like your input as both a Green Party rep and as an architect, because what we're seeing is how valid. Homelessness is a major issue at present, and it's going to be a major issue during the election. But something to go back to, Francis, and the last time you and I caught up was at Pride, and yes, and as I say, you were there. You were looking splendid, wearing the chain of office. Tell me, what did that particular event, and I'm not talking about Pride, but from the 23rd or the 22nd of May, did equality? Was it just a political issue, or did you see that this was really a statement of intent from the Irish people?
The referendum, or
the outcome, I suppose. Yes.
It's a statement. I always think Ireland slightly, and I don't like saying this, but is slightly behind the curve, and there's all sorts of reasons, and are slow to come around. We're a conservative country, but I think the media and the internet has opened our eyes to seeing what is or isn't out there, and I think there's an acceptance. I think maybe the church slightly has been moved aside. Like I'm originally from Monaghan, and I spoke to people down in Monaghan, and you know, they
voted yes. They did, because there's only Roscommon who didn't.
Yes, no. But I think the point was what I was being told was a lot of the older people just won't vote because they're conflicted between the church and what they actually feel, and it was, you know, there's there was funny things up the country, like they had posters out around the country, you know, two bulls doesn't make a herd.
Or Adam and Steve and all of that stuff. But it's interesting you should say that, because I think that in itself is a significant change, is that Irish people didn't vote along a certain line. If the issue didn't affect them, they didn't vote, even if they were a bit, as you say, if they were conflicted. And I think that was an important issue in that sense of the word, that they didn't suddenly weigh in and say, well, this doesn't affect us, but we're going to be against these people. And I thought that was a significant
as in people stood back.
Yes. They took a neutral position.
Well, I actually think that if everybody came out and voted, it might have been a no vote, because do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think that there was a bit of let them at it, you know. You know, that might sound wrong.
Well, as I say, I could understand where you're coming from, but see, I'll take issue with you that we're often behind, because the day of the count, I was receiving messages from all around the world, particularly Australia, where I've got a lot of contacts, and they love what we did. They see us as they see us following in their example. A prime minister just got kicked out. Marriage equality was I won't say it was the dominant issue, but it was an issue in him getting kicked out. The mayor of Tel Aviv came in and said, "Why can't we be more like Ireland?" You know. So I think, you know, yes, what we do is we tend to get to the curve and then we go round it like Roadrunner. You know, once we get to the curve.
I think it's great. Like, you know, I'm fully behind it. So.
Yeah. Well, as I say, the Green Party were the initiators, and I've always said that the Green Party initiated civil unions.
But Fianna Fáil wouldn't let it go the whole way, so.
We know that. And in fact,
and then they came fully behind it this time round. So.
Yeah, but I mean, if you saw the original Fianna Fáil proposal for gender recognition, it was astonishing. I mean, it was embarrassing, is all you can say. So what we ended up there. But on that basis, then now, Francis. Inclusivity, equality is quite an interesting term, because it can actually mean all things to all people. The current one that I find is the interesting one now is the gender quotas. We've put in legislation that say 30% of candidates should be. Yeah. I'll be interested in your opinion on this one, because anybody who heard me on Vincent Brown last week would have heard me say, I believe that we now need to deal with the 51% inequality, and that's female. On that basis, how do you feel about more women TDs then?
More women TDs than men?
Well, no. More women TDs being elected, because at the moment we are 15% of the parliament, 22nd out of 27 in Europe.
I don't know if this bit of history, hopefully it's right. The original. The Greeks had their word to describe an urban centre was a polis.
A polis, yes.
Yeah. So from polis we get politics and the governance of that area. And so if you bring that forward to 100 years ago, so 2,000 years men have been, because no women were in the polis or involved in politics, at least directly. So if you, only 100 years ago, Markovich gets elected, I think the first in the British Isles, or whatever these islands, first woman elected. And to me, and I've had this argument with various people, I think there should be gender quotas, and if it forces the issue, because there's 2,000 years to catch up on, and it's going to be a male or is a male dominated environment, and whether people say it is or it isn't or get on with it, I don't think that's fair, because for 2,000 years that's the way it's been. And so I'm in favour of them. I think it's going to encourage people to get elected. Some women will get elected that men and women shouldn't get elected just because they put their hand up and get elected. But I think it's a good thing.
I'll do two things here for you, Francis. I won't embarrass you. I will say, some people might say you've got a conflict of interest because your wife, Catherine Martin, she's a declared candidate in the Dublin Rathdown constituency for the Green Party.
Dublin Rathdown,
yeah. So I'll say that, yes. in that sense of the word, clearly both of us, from our philosophies, would probably think that's a good idea if a woman was there. But what would you think that women would bring to politics that's different? Does gender bring a different view? Does gender bring a different style?
I think they have a different, probably a different way of going about things. Like, you know, geez, you got to give me a hard one here. There's a whole load of things you go in on this one, but they have a different sense of reality, and
I'll make it easier for you. I think one of the fundamental differences women TDs would make, they make better listeners. Yes. Men are great at saying, "Oh no, this is what we should do," or "This is what I'm going to do," or whatever. Yeah. Women are more relational in my estimation. I wonder how you feel about that.
Yeah. Look, I spent a lot of my life with women because I enjoy talking to them because they talk. You know, men would be somewhat that bit more quieter and less, would discuss less, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's more about football or whatever.
I was hoping for a second there you were going to give us an exclusive and say, "And I'm gender fluid." But it's an interesting one in that one. And again, another issue I raised is that when we look at austerity versus prosperity, both disproportionately affect women in the sense that prosperity usually is governed by men, whereas austerity is traditionally women get to deal with it whether they like it or not. How do you feel about that? Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like what I've said. If men have been ruling the planet for the last 2,000 years, whatever, it's going to take time. As I had an argument with a chap 2 years ago about this, and he was totally against gender, the quotas.
Gender quotas, yeah.
And he has very rational reasons for it, and that's fine. But I think it's going to happen. It'll probably happen anyway. But by doing this, it'll speed it up. Okay. As in we should get to a stage where, I might not be alive, where there is an equal representation of men and women, and then you get a fairer outlook or direction in whichever way the country or planet should be going, or whatever.
Yeah. I've heard some of these, but would you care to share what his rational explanations were? Because usually I find them more emotional than rational. When people knock gender quotas or people knock women in politics.
This chap he would think that that women do have at the moment.
He's not thinking they're too emotional.
No. Well, they live longer than us.
Yeah.
So in his mind, he would be saying that they are taken care of far better than we are, as the male in the population of the planet.
That's very generalisation, isn't
it? I can't remember all the stats.
I have no doubt that Dalkey women live longer than Dalkey men, but I'm pretty sure Dalkey men live a lot longer than, say, perhaps Nigerian women or
of course,
or Ethiopian women.
100%. But I think in the context of society, and you've men and women in that society, his argument is women are taken care of, and therefore they live longer. Now maybe there's a genetic reason for it, but I'm just giving you his.
No, that's what I'm always interested to hear what because usually in the past we used to go, you couldn't have a woman in charge of an army, or you couldn't have a woman because they're too emotional and all sorts of things. And most of those arguments we've pretty much discredited at this stage. Yep.
I think in that context it's the personality of the person, whether they're male or female. I'm sure there's a spectrum. If men and women have been effeminate or masculine, you know what I mean? So some men are feminine. Yeah. Like I'd consider myself a feminine type of person.
Of course you will. We're touchy-feely.
Exactly, yeah. And then there'd be women that would be more on the male spectrum of, kind of hardcore.
A lot of that's probably cultural, because if you ever go to particularly in Arab country, you see the blokes walking down the road holding hands.
Yeah, wearing dresses.
Yeah, and wearing dresses or jalabas or whatever they want. Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily translate into sexuality or anything like that, because if it did, they'd probably get stoned.
I'm thinking in my own kind of, I had a foster sister, and she would have been, she's married to her Helen, And Helen, I can see, is more feminine, and Evelyn would be quite.
Well, as I say, we're learning a great deal more about gender and roles and all of those things. But something now, I'll be very interested in your view on this one, Francis, because it's been huge in one respect over the last couple of weeks, and that's the issue of refugees stroke migrants. Now, something I've only ever heard canvassed once, and this is right into the Green Party area, is that we're all saying, oh yeah, they all want to come up here and have a great life and blah, 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 because it's not great where they are. That's true. But somebody raised the point, and I thought this was very significant, and that is that with climate change, a lot of these people's places are starting to become very difficult to live in. And that is a driving force. Now, I'm not saying it's not a dominant driving force or that people traffickers and smugglers aren't involved, but how do you feel about that in relation to the whole issue of climate change? We tend to see as a very middle class issue, but I suspect it's like equality, like inclusivity. It's a lot more of a broad spectrum.
I think in the context of migration to do with the climate, well, the Syrian situation is more about people being murdered, so that's that movement. Yes. But it does give you that kind of visualizing, seeing these kind of clips on the TV where I'm watching a movie, like that there's this apocalyptic reality going on where there's this huge movement of people, and you can see it potentially in the future of maybe the whole water will be a difficulty, but I'm not 100% sure, because like I'll be starting teaching my students on Friday, and I do an environmental lecture with them, and one of the things is the different types of buildings, and you've got your Irish cottage, and then you've got your adobe house in wherever it is. Yes. They're both made of similar materials, but they do the cob house, say, we wouldn't have had that many, but England, you'd get the cob house made of mud, and you get the adobe house wherever it is in Africa or Mexico. And they do two things. One is keeping heat out, and one is keeping heat in. But they're both made of similar materials and allowing a certain amount of light in. But I think we're quite versatile in how we have inhabited the planet to date and worked within whatever environment. I would say it's more the first world countries pillaging various other countries of their resources, which doesn't allow them to inhabit their environment as maybe they should. And so, so the context of the climate change happening, it's kind of it's man-made anyway, but I'd say that we might be a more political kind of pillaging of
so at the end of the day, it does come back to economics. More so than science in that sense of the word. Well,
to an extent. Like you can see the fact that putting up walls around Europe, lads, stay out. This is our space. We've got the Eden, and you can stay wherever.
Yeah. Would you subscribe to the view that I tend to propose? Being an old '60s radical and hippie, that the main problem is the war. Stop the war, and we will start resolving a few issues. That people want to live in their own country. People want to live in their place. How do you feel about that?
Well, of course, stop the war.
Yeah. There seems to be very little reluctance. I mean, to actually do that by all sides, doesn't there?
To actually stop the war.
Yeah, I mean the Russians are going in with military. We know
it's a strange dynamic at the moment, because I wouldn't be a Bush fan, but I think if Bush was in power, Bush had been there already. He'd have gone in there and put out the fire. I think I could be wrong.
He didn't do a great job in Iraq, though, did he?
Yeah, but I know. But I mean, at the same time, most people that are from Iraq, I assume, haven't left the country.
Yeah.
Whereas, anyway, I just think that I could be wrong in what I'm saying, but that would be my thought in it. That maybe Bush or the Americans typically would go in, and they're going to go in one way forcefully, stop the war. By not stopping the war, people have fled, but I assume that can't go on that much longer, because everybody will be left.
I don't want to get into too much geopolitics, but I'm just not too sure the Russians would stand idly by.
Oh, I know that, and that might be part of the reason. Obama just is not.
Tell me, Francis, the last time we spoke, because I had a look at some of your art, and I said you were a very fine artist. You've got an exhibition in the making. Is that?
I think the dates are fixed now. Okay. In February. I think sometime early February we'll be opening it, and
any idea of the venue?
Ballyrone Library in Rathfarnham.
Okay.
The Mayor Holland,
Yes.
Sarah, in her kind of opening speech, talked about equality for women. These women that I have painted, so there'll be prints of the ladies from 1916. So the exhibition is 1916 women,
the gals of
rising
the
up.
revolution. Excellent.
So they she talked about equality for women. I just felt that these women, I'd come across them in an architectural project I was doing with students. It was in Kilmainham Jail. I was shown the A wing where all this graffiti was, and the lady that showed me around, she commented and was very emotional about these ladies, that they'd just been swept under the carpet by men, and they were forgotten women. So Sinead McCool has written No Ordinary Women, and also Guns and Chiffon about these women, and I just said I had to paint them.
Okay.
And Bridie, I'm going to look here, Bridie Halpin, amazing woman. She wrote, "Far better the grave of a rebel without a cross, without stone, without name, than a treaty with treacherous England that can only bring sorrow and shame." Now, the interesting thing about her was, like a lot of women that left the country after the Civil War, and they were named and shamed, and either went to England or the States and Australia. She went to New York, and she was the matriarch. She never married, and when she died, I think she was 85, they found her belongings, a suitcase under her bed with her internment papers, and she'd never told anybody. And quite amazing. A lot of these women went off and did what they did. There's another woman, Catherine Jake Folan. She was 15 years old and was arrested and sent to jail. And these women were moving guns around, and they were messengers going around the country, doing whatever they had to do. So I just felt that they should be. Basically, what I said was, I have to paint these women to show what they've done.
I am with you 100%. And have you included Estelle Solomon?
No.
She was an artist. She was an artist herself. She was because I think what you're doing is fabulous, and I want you to remind us closer to the date so we can come out there and see the opening. I think you're what I've said to people in the past. You're a very fine artist. No, Estelle Solomon was a very interesting one. She a lot of her work, I believe, is at a gallery in Sligo. Her brother was Bethel Solomon, who was the only Jew to ever play for Ireland in an international. He was a rugby international, and he was also the master of the Rotunda. But she painted and. There were, like, the IRA gave people code names like the milkman and the bread man, and she actually painted them.
Cool.
So as I say, if you get a chance, but no, I think what you've done is terrific, because I think 1916 we need to see the spectrum, whether it's women, whether it's minorities, whether it's gay people, whether it's Protestants, because it was, despite what people would tell you, it was actually. It was a very democratic in the sense that it attracted people from all across the board.
The interesting thing, and I don't know what time you have, but the Markovich wanted to join the political wing with Dev and all the lads, and that didn't happen. So In and Harem was set up, and then post that they wouldn't allow them to join the military end of it. So again, they set up their own Cumann na mBan. So they just went out and did. Which is amazing.
Exactly. That was our whole thing. Before we go, Francis, I just want to show you this. There's the whole issue of homelessness, and just for the people here, something I photographed this morning: 2 men sleeping in sleeping bags in the park. Homelessness, a major issue?
It is a major issue. I know we had people sleeping in the county council offices before the summer because they had nowhere to live. We're going to look at these buildings.
We are going to look at these modular solutions, and I'd be interested to see your view as an architect. Yes.
I think the big problem is, and sorry Fianna Fáil, but taking away the remit of the council building council houses, and it's a pity, and put it down to the builders to supply them. Big mistake. I was rared in the council house. Nothing wrong. Anyway.
Probably getting rid of the rights to win an election probably contributes to that. Francis, we'll go up the road, we'll have a look at what they've got on offer, but always a pleasure.
Thank you.
See you next exhibition.